There are moments when time tightens, when movements that have been unfolding for years quietly arrive at a point of consequence. Not dramatic, not loud, but irreversible. For Taurus, 2026 is one of those moments. This is not prophecy. It's not prediction in the mystical sense. It's pattern, long arcs of motion, reaching their natural turning point. Cycles that began before you were fully aware of yourself now completing their work. If you know the exact moment you were born, this story speaks most precisely to your rising sign, the degree of the sky that greeted you as you entered the world. If you don't, your sun sign will still guide you well enough. Either way, what unfolds over the coming year is not cosmetic change. It reshapes the internal structure of your life. The only real question is not whether change will arrive. It will. The question is whether you'll recognize it while it's happening or only understand it later. In hindsight, February 2026 deserves your attention. For nearly 3 years, since March of 2023, Saturn has been moving to your 11th house, the domain of friendships, alliances, communities, and the future you imagine yourself belonging to. Saturn doesn't decorate. It edits. It removes what can't sustain weight. Over this period, it's been asking you something quietly relentless. Who are your people, really? Not who you hoped they'd be, not who they were once, but who they are now in practice. Who shows up, who drains you, who grows with you, and who keeps you frozen in an older version of yourself. These questions didn't stay abstract. They showed up as real changes, shifting friendships, fading connections, disappointments that felt confusing at the time, but necessary in retrospect. And Saturn wasn't working alone. Since 2011, Neptune has been drifting through the same sector of your chart. Neptune dissolves boundaries. It blurs. It idealizes. For over a decade, it's been tempting you to believe in the best version of your communities, sometimes at the cost of seeing them clearly. It's been easy under Neptune to confuse hope with truth, intention with impact. In February 2026, these two planets meet in exact conjunction. This alignment has been anticipated for years because of what it represents collectively. But for you, its meaning is personal. Both planets are preparing to leave your 11th house and cross into the 12th, a movement from the external world into the interior one, from social engagement into private reckoning. The 12th house has an ominous reputation. Historically, it was associated with exile, confinement, undoing. And there is truth there, but not the kind people fear. This is the place where illusions can no longer survive, where we retreat to understand how we've been shaped, compromised, or quietly depleted. It's where we notice the ways we fail to protect ourselves, the ways we tolerated what slowly diminished us, and also where we rediscover the parts of ourselves that were neglected while we were busy being useful, present, agreeable. As Saturn and Neptune enter the space together, the first thing that happens is dissolution. February can feel confusing, disorienting, especially in your perception of other people. You may find it difficult to trust your instincts about who is safe, who is harmful, and who simply doesn't belong in your inner circle anymore. This doesn't mean anyone is plotting against you. More often, it means you're finally noticing the cumulative effect of subtle misalignment. Some relationships don't end because of betrayal. They end because they quietly erode your well-being over time. This conjunction asks you to see what you've been excusing, justifying, or avoiding naming. But here's the complication. Saturn and Neptune together also create fog. They make certainty elusive. That's why February is not the time for irreversible decisions. It's a time for observation, for noticing patterns, for tracking how your body responds to certain people, spaces, obligations. Think of this period as revelation, not resolution. As spring progresses and these planets move deeper into the 12th house, clarity returns. By late spring and early summer, what was ambiguous becomes obvious. Boundaries that felt harsh in February will feel necessary by June. Distances that once felt uncomfortable will feel stabilizing. There's also something simpler and just as important happening here. You are tired, not in a dramatic way. In the quiet, accumulated sense of having given too much outwardly for too long. The 12th house governs rest, real rest. the kind that isn't optimized, shared, or productive. For years, you've invested heavily in groups, causes, and collective effort. That investment mattered. But now your system needs repair. More sleep, more silence, less performance. Time where you don't have to be anyone for anyone else. This isn't weakness. It's biological intelligence. Every cycle includes withdrawal. Ignoring that truth is how burnout masquerades as responsibility. As February moves into March, eclipse season arrives. Eclipses are interruptions, moments when the usual order pauses just long enough to reveal something hidden. They don't whisper, they underline. The first eclipse lands in Aquarius, activating your 10th house, your career, your public role, your reputation. This begins a new eclipse cycle that will shape the next year and a half of your professional life. Something starts to shift here. Sometimes it's obvious, a job change, a new role, a departure. Other times it's subtler, a change in leadership, a restructuring, a realization that alters how you relate to your work. Pay attention to what emerges in February, even if it feels small. Eclipses often introduce storylines before they fully unfold. Then in March, the second eclipse arrives in Virgo, illuminating your 5th house. This is the part of life that exists beyond survival. Creativity, pleasure, romance, play, the things you choose when no one is watching. For some, this eclipse marks a transition involving children, a milestone, a separation, a new phase that changes your daily reality. For others, it opens a door to parenthood itself. Romance lives here too. A new connection may arrive with a sense of immediacy, or an existing one may quietly complete its arc. Not every ending is dramatic. Some simply make room. And then there's a question you may not have wanted to answer. What joy have you postponed? What creative impulse keeps resurfacing, but never quite finds space in your life? This eclipse doesn't demand action through guilt. It invites curiosity. What would change if you allowed yourself this? This is not the final chapter in that story, but it is an important one. Then April arrives, and something long-running finally concludes. After 7 years, Uranus leaves Taurus. 7 years ago was 2019. Think about who you were then. Think about what felt fixed, unquestionable, inevitable. Uranus has been moving through your 1st house, the house of identity, body, autonomy, dismantling those assumptions piece by piece. For 7 years, change came through disruption, through awakenings you didn't schedule, through realizations that arrived suddenly, rewriting your self-understanding. Some of you changed how you look. Some changed how you name yourselves. Some simply became unfamiliar to people who once thought they knew you well. In February, Uranus stations direct in Taurus for the final time, intensifying everything it's been trying to complete. This is the last stretch of a deeply personal revolution. One final adjustment before the focus shifts. In April, Uranus enters Gemini, activating your 2nd house, money, resources, value, survival. The preview already happened last year, between July and November, when Uranus briefly crossed its threshold before retrograding back. If something unusual happened with your finances then, instability, opportunity, insight, remember it. Those were seeds. For the next 7 years, your relationship to money will evolve through experimentation. Independence becomes central. New ways of earning. New definitions of security. Traditional paths may feel restrictive. Fluctuation replaces predictability, not to punish you, but to free you. This isn't a moment. It's a long journey, but it begins now. And the direction you move in April matters. The revolution that reshaped who you are now turns toward how you live. Jupiter carries a different kind of energy into 2026. Where the earlier months asked for withdrawal, discernment, and internal repair, this next phase quietly opens doors. Not all at once, not explosively, but steadily, through small expansions that accumulate into something meaningful. The year begins with Jupiter finishing its passage through Cancer, moving through your 3rd house. This transit began in mid-2025, so none of this is entirely new. You've already felt the first stirrings. But what unfolds now is the part where the effect becomes tangible. The 3rd house is close to the ground. It governs your immediate world, the streets you walk, the people you run into, the conversations that shape your days. Siblings, neighbors, colleagues, the ordinary exchanges that rarely feel important in the moment, but quietly define your quality of life. It's also the house of communication and learning, not abstract knowledge, but usable understanding, the kind that helps you navigate reality more effectively. Speaking, writing, teaching, listening, asking better questions. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Here, that expansion often shows up as voice. You may find yourself expressing more or more confidently, writing more, speaking with greater ease, being asked for your opinion, and noticing that people actually listen. There's a sense that what you think matters, not because it's perfect, but because it's grounded. Sometimes the expansion is literal. Your neighborhood improves. New resources appear. Your relationship with siblings or people nearby deepens in ways you didn't anticipate. You become more connected to where you are, rather than where you imagine yourself someday being. If you've been considering classes, certifications, languages, or skill building of any kind, this is one of the most supportive windows you've had in years. What you learn now won't stay theoretical. It becomes useful later, often in ways that aren't obvious at the start. But Jupiter has no filter. In the third house, expansion without intention can become noise. Too many conversations, too many commitments, too many yes said casually and regretted later. Oversharing, overpromising, mental fatigue from constant stimulation. The opportunity here is real, but so is the risk of scattering yourself thin. Jupiter offers growth, not boundaries. You still have to decide where your energy belongs. What you choose to amplify matters. In late June, the atmosphere shifts. Jupiter leaves Cancer and enters Leo, crossing into your fourth house. If the third house describes your daily terrain, the fourth is your foundation. Home, family, ancestry, emotional safety. The place you return to when the outside world stops watching. For the next year, this becomes the most supported area of your life. Sometimes it means a move, not necessarily bigger, but better, more aligned. A space that fits who you are now, not who you used to be. A place where your body relaxes without effort. Other times, it means investing in a home you already have. Repairs finally getting done. Improvements that change how the space feels. Jupiter here often brings resources at the right moment. Help, money, timing. Making what could have been stressful feel strangely manageable. But the fourth house goes deeper than walls and roofs. Family lives here, especially parents. Jupiter's influence can soften long-standing tensions, not by rewriting the past, but by giving you more perspective, more generosity, more room to see the full human complexity of the people who shaped you. This doesn't mean every family issue resolves, but it does mean you're less trapped inside old emotional scripts. You may find yourself releasing grievances that once felt essential to hold, not because they weren't real, but because they no longer define you. Ancestry also becomes more meaningful, not as nostalgia, but as context. You may feel drawn to understand where you come from, what was carried forward to your family line, what strengths were forged long before you were born. This isn't about obligation. It's about orientation. And then there's the quietest dimension of all. The fourth house is your life when no one is watching. Your mornings, your evenings, your unguarded moments. Jupiter here expands your capacity to find nourishment in privacy. Solitude becomes restorative instead of lonely. Home becomes a place of actual refuge. This matters because Jupiter in your fourth house forms a supportive relationship with Saturn and Neptune in your 12th. 3 planets, all activating the deepest layers of your chart. Together, they redirect your attention away from constant visibility and toward inner stability. The world will continue asking you to perform, to prove your worth through output. But this configuration values something else entirely: rest, containment, and the slow strengthening of your foundation, even when no one else can see the work being done. June brings a rare moment of ease. Venus and Jupiter meet in Cancer, still in your third house, just before Jupiter moves into Leo. This is one of the most supportive alignments of the year. Not dramatic, not life-altering overnight, but unusually cooperative. If there's a conversation you've been postponing, this is an excellent time for it. If there's paperwork, negotiations, agreements, or messages that matter, timing them near this conjunction helps. If you've been waiting to reach out to a sibling, a neighbor, someone nearby, this is a moment when goodwill flows more easily. This alignment doesn't promise outcomes. Astrology never does. What it offers is favorable conditions. Effort meets less resistance. Words land more gently. Doors are slightly more inclined to open. This is what timing is really about. Not control, but alignment. As summer deepens, the eclipses return. In August, an eclipse arrives in Leo, activating your fourth house. This begins a new eclipse series that will continue into 2027, which means whatever starts now is only the opening movement. Eclipses compress time. They bring endings and beginnings together, often in ways that feel personal before they make sense. Here, the focus is home and family, but also your internal foundation. For some, this will coincide with a physical move or a shift in living arrangements. For others, family dynamics change. A parent's needs evolve, a child leaves or returns, a domestic agreement is renegotiated. But not all changes are visible. This eclipse can mark the end of an old private identity. A version of yourself you've lived with quietly may no longer fit. Questions surface about belonging, loyalty, and what you owe your past versus what you owe your future. Who are you when you're alone? And who are you becoming beneath the surface of your public life? Then, in early September, the second eclipse arrives, this time in Pisces, in your 11th house. This one closes a cycle that began in 2024. A long chapter about friendship, community, and belonging comes to completion here. Think back. Who entered your life over the past 2 years? Who left? What did you learn about the difference between proximity and alignment? Between obligation and genuine connection? This eclipse clarifies all of it, often with relief. Saturn has made your social world heavier since 2023, forcing you to confront limits, expectations, and boundaries. Now that weight lifts. What remains isn't built on duty, but on resonance. Let what's ending end. Space will not stay empty. As the year moves toward autumn, your ruling planet slows down. First, then work, health, and daily life. In the 7th house, past relationships resurface. Sometimes literally, sometimes internally. Former partners, collaborators, unresolved dynamics return to consciousness. The question isn't whether to revive the past. It's whether you've integrated what it taught you. Some connections may deserve reconsideration. Others return only to confirm that the ending was right. The retrograde clarifies through contrast. As Venus moves into your 6th house, attention turns to labor and well-being. How you work, how you care for your body, whether your daily routines reflect your values or contradict them. Workplace relationships may shift. Tension surface. Appreciation becomes visible. The small imbalances you tolerated become harder to ignore. This is not the time for final decisions. Venus retrograde is for observation, not commitment. Let patterns reveal themselves. Let clarity build. By late November, Venus moves forward again. And when it does, the choices that once felt complicated become obvious. Expansion doesn't always mean more. Sometimes it means deeper roots. As autumn begins, the pace shifts again. In September, Mars enters Leo and moves into your 4th house. And this time, it doesn't pass through quickly. Mars slows. It lingers. What is usually a 6-week transit stretches into months, carrying its influence through the end of 2026 and deep into 2027. You'll feel the difference almost immediately. Mars is normally direct, urgent, oriented toward action and resolution. But as it slows in preparation for its retrograde early next year, that energy turns inward. Less conquest, more confrontation with what's already there. Less momentum, more repetition. And the terrain it's moving through matters. The 4th house is home, family, emotional foundations. The places and people you can't simply walk away from. When Mars occupies the space for an extended period, effort is required. Energy is spent not on ambition, but on maintenance, protection, and sometimes conflict. For some, this shows up in literal ways. Repairs, renovations, projects that begin simply and then reveal layers beneath the surface. Mars brings urgency, But the retrograde brings delays, not to frustrate you, to force you to slow down and do it properly. For others, the work is emotional. Family dynamics that have been managed quietly now demand attention. An aging parent needs more support. Old tensions resurface. Roles shift. And you may find yourself taking on responsibilities you didn't formally agree to, simply because someone has to. Mars here also asks something more personal. Where have you been over-accommodating? Where have you stayed quiet to keep the peace, even as it costs you privacy, autonomy, or rest? This transit pushes you to assert yourself differently at home, not explosively, but firmly, to define boundaries that haven't existed before, to stop treating availability as obligation. Because Mars is slowing, you won't solve everything at once. You'll revisit the same issues multiple times, each pass revealing something new. This isn't inefficiency. It's refinement. There's a deeper echo here. This Mars retrograde mirrors one from 15 years ago, in 2011. Different life, different circumstances, but the same section of the sky. Think back, if you can, what was under construction then. In your home life, your family relationships, your creative identity. What felt difficult, unresolved, unfinished? Mars retracing these degrees doesn't mean history repeats itself. It means themes return at a different level of maturity. What you couldn't fully resolve then may now be ready for a different outcome. Not because the problem changed, but because you did. Even if you don't consciously remember, pay attention to what surfaces. The body remembers cycles even when the mind doesn't. What makes this period workable, even constructive, is Jupiter. Jupiter entered Leo in June, already blessing your fourth house. As Mars arrives, both planets occupy the same territory. This matters. Mars brings pressure. Jupiter brings resources. You may need to do hard things, and discover support appears when you need it. Help, funding, solutions you hadn't anticipated. Jupiter doesn't erase difficulty, but it widens the frame. It reminds you that challenge doesn't equal deprivation. If a family situation feels overwhelming, perspective arrives. If a home project stretches your capacity, assistance emerges. If exhaustion sets in, relief becomes possible. Trust that. Don't assume the Mars retrograde means damage. Often, it means restructuring with backup. As Mars continues its journey, it also moves into your fifth house. Creativity, pleasure, romance, children. This is where life stops being purely functional. Mars retrograde here doesn't demand performance. It asks a quieter question. What have you been postponing? What creative impulse keeps knocking and getting ignored? What joy did you abandon because it wasn't efficient? What playfulness did you lose as responsibility accumulated? This period isn't about producing something impressive. It's about reconnecting, experimenting, being awkward, letting yourself try without knowing where it leads. If you have children, your attention may be pulled more strongly toward them now, not necessarily through conflict, but through presence. They may be navigating transitions that require patience and adaptability. And because Mars is retrograde, you'll learn through repetition, adjusting, trying again. Perfection isn't the goal. Engagement is. By December, you'll be fully inside the cycle even though Mars hasn't officially turned retrograde yet. The work has already begun. Anything you start now, involving home, family, creativity, or children, will take time. This isn't a quick fix season. It's an extended campaign. You return to the same tasks. You refine. You course correct. You learn by doing, then redoing. This isn't failure. It's how lasting foundations are built. Step back now. Look at the full arc of the year. It began with Saturn and Neptune leaving your house of friends and moving into your house of solitude, asking you to rest, withdraw, and reclaim your boundaries. Eclipses reshape your career and your creativity. Uranus ended a 7-year reinvention of your identity and began a long transformation of how you earn and value resources. Jupiter expanded your communication, then blessed your home. Eclipses close an old chapter in friendship, while opening a new one in family and belonging. Venus retrograde through partnership and work, forcing you to reassess relationships and labor. And now Mars asks for sustained effort where it matters most, not in public achievement, but in private life. The pattern is unmistakable. This is not a year of loud success. It's a year of structural integrity, of reinforcing the parts of your life that hold everything else up. Astrology doesn't require belief to be useful. It's pattern recognition, a way of understanding timing, a reminder that pressure has purpose and that cycles complete themselves. You don't need to treat this as destiny. Treat it as orientation. What 2026 offers you is permission. Permission to retreat without guilt, to focus on what's private without apologizing for it, to build slowly, to rest deeply, to redefine security on your own terms, to invest in what nourishes you when no one is watching. If this perspective resonates with you, take a moment now. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Like the video if this helped bring clarity. And leave a comment. Let me know what part of this cycle you're already feeling. Your attention matters, and so does how you use this year.